Is there nothing that you know now that you wish you knew when you first started?
Honestly, well, there's a lot, obviously. Like there's just so much, like if I would have known maybe some of the stuff I knew about investment properties and figuring out different ways of pulling equity and the connections and how you approach real estate, there's so many things you could have learned. I could have told myself years ago. But the problem is what I know now is that maybe back then you wouldn't have listened to me. So like a lot of it is experience. And that's the thing I tell a lot of people, like anytime there's a bad situation, whether you're a landlord or whether you're owning a property, at the time there's a setback, that's always a learning experience. Don't take it as a negative, because it doesn't, and we can apply that to life as well. But especially with real estate, it's like, well, if you have a bad tenant or the tenants are doing something else, like what are you learning from that? Like what were your mistakes and how do you improve on that? So I think every kind of step of the way and every new challenge happens every market. Right now here in Toronto, we are having a buyer's market, a really, really strong buyer's market. Sales are really like taking a hit. There is a lot of, not like lack of buyer confidence. But what I'm telling people now is like, listen, if you can persevere, and I'm telling my agents that I work with, that I mentor with, if you can make it through this market, don't give up. Like you are going to be a killer when the market actually turns around. So that's another thing I wanted well, probably would have told myself as another younger agent. Like, it doesn't matter what type of a market you're in, right? You can persevere with that and you can be successful in that market. You just got to keep doing what you're doing. You got to do all the positive things. And don't look when you're actually having like a crazy great year. Like, again, don't get too high. From my hockey days, I used to be a goalie back in the day, like played some professional hockey. We always would say, like, especially in net, when you're a goalie, you can't get too high and you can't get too low, because all of a sudden, if you're thinking like nothing's in the, like as a goalie, if you're thinking like you're king shit, excuse my language, if you think like you're too high, next thing you know, you got like 10 goals get scored behind you. And it happens too if you're too low. Like you can't have that volatile, like personality, because your teammates and people will see that around you. Same with your clients, right? When things are negative, you have to be the beacon of hope and like saying, no, everything's kind of steady, like everything's nice and calm. And I find that when the market gets too high, there's a panic stage. So using those metaphors really, really has helped me throughout the years. And just now I'm seeing it now, like my younger days set me up for that. So experience really does help. So yeah, there's a lot of learning experience if you can go from there.
Oh yeah, it's interesting what you just said. You said, yeah, I mean, I would go back and tell myself this, but I don't think if myself back then would get it. It kind of reminds me of the analogy that Neil deGrasse Tyson made. He said some of this information might be the equivalent to giving a baby a set of car keys. No matter what this, even if this baby knows where these keys are supposed to go, due to the limitations of this baby, you can't push the steering, you can't push the gas or the brakes, you can't see over the dashboard. And yes, I got the set of keys. Yes, I got this information that I needed, but this information does me no good in the mental mind state that I am now. That's very self-aware of you.
Well, yeah, and I try to explain like the experience is huge. You'd be surprised how many like realtors, for example, here in Toronto, like they're trying to help people buy and sell, and they've never done it themselves. So I'm always questioning them, like, well, how do you know their pitfalls? How do you really be empathetic with somebody if they've never owned a property, if they never had these problems? If you're supposed to be an investor, well, wouldn't you want to talk to an investor who's a realtor who's an investor himself? Because they're going to see like, oh, you must have a ton of stories. Well, if you don't, like, how do you navigate through something like this? How are you going to know that, right? Experience is key. It's huge. And I can teach you book smart and all that kind of stuff too, but you're going to have to go out and experience it. You're going to have to see the pitfalls. You're going to have to see like, hey, this was easy, this was hard. And again, doing is so much more, not the word pragmatic, but it's the experience you get by doing it yourself is immeasurable. Like you cannot put those into a textbook at all, right? So it's like, yeah, absolutely. But again, like, and I said to myself, if I think about things what I thought about like 21, 22 years ago and how immature even I was looking at properties and knowing what I know now. And it's like, no, you dumbass. Like you could have done this. But again, you had to go through all that pain and suffering. Like I almost sold properties at a loss because I was frustrated and stuff too. And it's like, if I would have sat back and said, well, I would have had a mentor and said, if you do this, this, and this, here's how you could improve. But I didn't know that until later. Like in 2008, for example, we have a sixplex, which we still own, my wife and I had bought it before we got married. And then when we got married, obviously she's on title too. So my wife was helping me in the beginning, and it was a frustrating property. It was older. It was my first property. It didn't really have a lot of experience. And I was always getting these phone calls. Hey, this is not working. This is not doing this. And it was just frustrating over and over again. And I almost tried to sell it like literally at a loss. And it was like, well, not a loss, but it was like a very small gain.